So moving on to another story, and that of the developments in neighboring Eswatini. Now, the government of Eswatini has introduced a curfew amid concern over the ongoing pro-democracy protests in that country. People are not allowed to be out on the streets from 6 in the evening until 5 in the morning, and schools remain closed. It is also dismissed as false reports that King Mswati III has fled the country and has sought to reassure the amaSwati nation that the king remains in the country and is working with government to advance the kingdom's goals. Various media reports, however, seem to be in contrast with the government's statements, with some reporting that the police and the army had opened fire on pro-democracy protesters. Political activists and civil society groups have also called on the international community to intervene in the hope of creating a democratic system in Eswatini. Managing Editor of Swaziland News, Zweli Martin Dlamini, joins us now for the latest developments in Eswatini. Thanks so much for your time and welcome to Morning Live.
Good day. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm very well, thanks, Zweli. Zweli, I mean, it's been one of those stories that's been so difficult to track because it seems as though social media has been cut down or shut down. Please, can you just give us a sense, because it's difficult for us not in Eswatini to give a clear sense of what is actually happening there.
Okay, what actually happened yesterday, the government decided to shut down the internet to control the flow of information. What is happening now, citizens are being shot by the army and the police, and the hospitals are being flooded with casualties. We don't know what happened because a few days ago, I think about a day or two ago, we received information that the king fled the country, but the government is disputing that without even producing the king. At this moment, one will hope that government will just dispute that the king did not flee the country by then urging the king to address the nation. But what we received is just a statement that the king is in the country. But the question now is, where is the king? The king hasn't even spoken to the nation for a long time now.
And of course, the government releasing that statement yesterday in an effort to assure the nation that the king is still in the country. But as you say, no proof. The king has yet to address the nation himself. At this point, it's the prime minister who is speaking. So just in terms of that, has there been any movement in and around the royal palace that people and the media have picked up on?
Yes, there are some reports that the king, some are saying the king is at Tlane, some are saying the king is at Zweli because he owns various palaces. But as you might be aware, in terms of security measures, you may find that a group of royal guards are being assembled to a certain particular royal residence so that those around can assume that the king is in that royal residence. So it's a bit complicated because the government, we are dealing with here a highly secretive government here that does not subscribe to transparency and accountability. So a mere statement cannot confirm that the king is in Eswatini. And then what happened yesterday, soldiers and police were deployed to make sure that people don't move around. They are hiding behind the COVID-19 regulation when in fact this is a political decision.
And then speaking of that, you touched on it in your previous response. What we are hearing is that the law enforcement officials have opened fire on some of the pro-democracy protesters. But again, in terms of just the proof of what you were saying, the hospitals being flooded, where is that? Because as I started out saying, it's so difficult to just ascertain what's happening on the ground at the moment from outside Eswatini.
Yeah, as journalists, we investigate, but obviously we expect the government, because what the government is doing now, they shut down the internet, because you will understand the role of the citizens in providing some of the videos and information. So as a journalist, you can get the information that the hospitals are flooded, but then government will come with a statement saying that is not true. That's why they are shutting down the internet, because they want to control the information. We will report, because we are still verifying some of the casualties, because as far as we understand now, there are people who have been shot dead, but we need to confirm that by conducting their relatives and doing all the necessary confirmation, so that we can make sure our stories are authentic. Even if we can have that information, we cannot just publish that information saying people or so and so has been shot dead. We need to make sure that this is verified. But then that is where then the government will come in and say, no people, no one has been killed. Or if we say maybe 2 people has been killed, the government will say 1 person has been killed. So it's they are just trying to make sure that they counter the information regarding the crisis that is now manifesting in the Kingdom of Mswati.
And as journalists, what is the climate like for you at this point? Because I'm having a conversation with you now from neighboring South Africa, but the things that we are discussing now, the sort of information that you are sharing with me at this moment, that of course flies in the face of what government is trying to tell the rest of the world. Does this place you in any sort of danger? Are you concerned for your safety at this point?
Yeah, it's true. The intelligence has been tracking me for a long time, and my life is in danger. It's not only my life that is in danger. Even the pro-democracy MPs are being traced by the army, because the king allegedly issued a command that they must be arrested. As you understand, in Eswatini, everyone's life is in danger who is pro-democracy, or speaking on behalf of the people. So the situation is getting serious day by day.
So just in terms of the issues at hand, the revolt being viewed as a pushback against an autocratic government and autocratic rule. But there have always been revolts in Eswatini from time to time, including labor unrest that we've also been reporting on from this side. But just last year, there were about 500 young people who gathered in Manzini district to demand the right to vote for their own prime minister. So have the spates of riots managed to win over some of the causes that we've seen these sporadic sort of gatherings and riots in favor of?
Yeah, what is actually happening in Eswatini is that a majority of the citizens are living in poverty, and that includes the youth. We have about 70% of the population in Eswatini living below the poverty line, and that is about over 700 citizens, because in Eswatini we have about 1.2 million population. So now what is happening with the emergence of the independent media and online media that is not censored by the government? After receiving the information that their plight has been caused by the government, the citizens decided to then demand democratic reforms, because they understand that maybe in a new democratic government, their lives will be better.
I would imagine, though, Zweli, that there are people who still support the monarchy. And I have to ask, just in terms of the protests and the protesters, are they against the monarchy, or is this about political reform at this stage?
The truth of the matter is that at first the people were suggesting that maybe if they can elect their own prime minister, they wanted a constitutional monarch, a political system almost similar to that in the United Kingdom, where a prime minister is elected and the queen is above, is not participating at all in politics, is not influencing decisions of the government. But then after the king decided to respond by violence, through the unleashing of the army and the police. It seems the people now are demanding that the king must step down. They want a republic. They want Eswatini to be a republic because, as you can see in the videos that we are consistently posting, even on our Twitter page, citizens are targeting properties linked to the king. You will understand that the king holds shares in most of the giant companies in Eswatini. So the protesters now are banning companies linked to the king and government property. So now it's clear that they don't want the king anymore.
So the constitution, of course, adopted in 1977, made the king the absolute monarch, the absolute ruler of the kingdom. And we've seen throughout the world, throughout history, that it does prove to be rather difficult, if not impossible, for someone who's been in power for so long to voluntarily hand over that power. So in your view, Zweli, what are the chances of the king, who has been in power for 35 years, to give that away?
Even though it might be hard, but history has taught us that no regime has ever won against the people. So if the people now want the king to step down, eventually he will fall. Yeah, because even if he has been in power for 100 years, he has been in power because the people have been tolerating him to be in power. So if it decided not to listen to the people, and then the people now, they want him to step down, and he will eventually do that because he survives because of the people. The people can survive without the king. There are many countries ruled by presidents and democratic governments. Kings are no more having influence in their lives. They are just traditional leaders. So we cannot say King Mswati cannot fall, because at the end of the day, he must fall if the people want him to step down.
So those who are now fighting for democracy in Eswatini, for a new democratic reform, for a republic, as you say, what are they hoping that SADC, the AU, and most immediately neighboring countries like South Africa would do in order to assist them achieve this goal?
I think for now, I was receiving information. I was conducting them just few minutes ago. They are preparing to hold a meeting to establish a legitimate council that will then usher the country into a new democratic dispensation. So I think South Africa and other regional organizations, what they need to do now is to make sure that they facilitate the transitional process, to make sure that the new democratic government takes over without any violence. So shortly, we need a peacekeeping process in the midst of formal negotiations with the king.
Well, Zweli, thanks so much for your time. We have to leave it there. Swaziland News Editor Zweli Martin Dlamini updating us on the current state of things in the Kingdom of Eswatini. And as he says, the internet has been shut down, so making it even more difficult for the rest of the world to get any sort of news from Eswatini, and saying that his life is in danger as well. So we'll continue tracking what's happening, the developments in neighboring Eswatini, and we'll inform you as best we can of what's happening there. That's where we have to leave it for today. Thank you so much for being with us.